Alright, so even though I said that this year was easily the worst year for movies since 2013, there were still a lot of really good movies this year. And I think I have a new record for the number of movies I've seen in a theater in a given year. And that's not including some really big movies that I haven't seen yet. The Post, Blade Runner 2049, Lady Bird, that 3 Billboards movie. And this list is only considering theatrical movies and Netflix movies. So even some really good direct-to-TV and DVD movies like Jesus Bro, the Hey Arnold Jungle movie, and the PBS documentary on the Oklahoma City bombing, they can't make it, but those are also really good. Now last year I had 12 honorable mentions, and that might be a bit excessive. I mean, if I was going to do that, I might as well just do a top 20 list. So I'm taking it back down to 8, but all of these are also really good and you should totally see them. But my actual list of honorable mentions are
The Lego Batman Movie, a very funny and genuinely pretty good Batman film. The Big Sick, a charming romantic dramedy with 2 very likable leads. Thor Ragnarok, funny over-the-top 80s music video put into a 2-hour movie. What's not to like? Get Out, a very original suspenseful film that goes in ways you never would have expected. Life, a great alien ripoff with fantastic effects and true horror. It would have been on the list, but the ending kind of killed it. Logan, a surprisingly dramatic film that still has the action that we expect from the X-Men series. Detroit, one of the most horrifying films of the year that feels real and leaves you angry, but in a good way. And finally, Spider-Man Homecoming. Well, I still like Spider-Man 2, and yes, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 more. This still had Tom Holland as an awesome Peter Parker, fun action, and an amazing villain.
So that's it for honorable mentions. Let's begin. We're counting down.
My top 10 favorite films of 2017. Number 10.
What line? What line?
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Okay.
I'll state that I haven't read the book that this film is based on, so I don't know how well it sticks to the actual events, but from what I've heard from people who did read the book, this is pretty accurate, which makes the movie even funnier. This is one of the funniest movies I saw all year. The dialogue is great, everyone has good timing, and just knowing that this actually happened makes it so humorous. This strange alien somehow got millions of dollars and became delusional enough that he thought he actually had acting talent, then decided to make a movie, and while doing it practically abused his cast and crew, and yet it actually does make me feel a little sorry for him. I mean, he's an asshole, but there is a passion there, and that's the reason The Room is remembered years later, and why it's regarded as a so bad it's good classic. And I do get the friendship between Tommy and Greg. They had great chemistry, and when things were going bad, it was pretty depressing. The acting is amazing. Dave Franco is great as Greg Cicero. He gets that smile down perfectly. Seth Rogen and Josh Hutcherson also give great performances that I don't think have been getting the credit they deserve, but by far the best performance is James Franco as Tommy Wiseau. He disappears into the role. It's almost uncanny how good he is. He is so excellent that I think he deserves the award for Best Supporting Actor. I love seeing how certain movies and actors led to him making those decisions in the room and what it was like to film some of those scenes. If anything, I wanted it to go on even longer. Besides that, the only other problem is sometimes the comedy is a bit too cringy for me, but more often than not, it's funny and oddly kind of charming in its own weird kind of way. Also, the soundtrack is great. There isn't a part where I didn't think we weren't in the early 2000s.
I liked the movie. It was good. It was really good. I liked it. I really did. Oh, hi, next number.
Number 9.
I've actually only ever seen 2 other Edgar Wright movies, so my inclusion of this on the list isn't because I'm a fanboy.
Something on the heavy side, in case we need to ram the cops off the road. Escalade, Yukon, Avalanche, whatever. He needs to be ready for an 8:30 start in the AM. Questions?
I'm glad this made a huge profit. I mean, it would have been hard to bomb given the surprisingly low budget, but the fact that it made over $200 million really makes me happy. We'll start with the action. This is some of the most well-shot and edited action I've seen this year, and they managed to get really creative with some of the car chases. And I'm kind of a sucker for car chases. It's hard for me to not enjoy them. Ansel Elgort, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who I thought was really good in the Divergent movies and The Fault in Our Stars, is great in this, as is pretty much the entire cast. I liked the crew. They all feel like real people and not just stereotypes. The chemistry between Baby and his girlfriend is really good, and I was fully invested in his character. The direction's great. I'm a sucker for the one take, and this movie has a scene that made me wonder, how the hell did they manage to pull that off? That is so rare nowadays. But really, that's all small fry. My main reason for liking this movie as much as I do is the editing. The plot, characters, and acting are all good, but they are basically just an excuse to edit footage to music. Which, if you know me, you know I'm kind of a sucker for that stuff. I love editing to music, so this movie was basically porn to me. And the music choices they made for the movie were great. If I had any nitpicks, the ending did go on for a while. I mean, I swear I thought this was wrapping up like 3 or 4 times, and by the time it stopped, I was more relieved than satisfied. And also, this is a personal problem, but I had a bad experience as a pizza delivery driver, so now anytime I see that in movies, I kinda get bad flashbacks. And there's a part in the middle with Baby as a delivery driver that made me want to fast forward. Besides that, Baby Driver was one of the best movies of the summer and basically serves as the fun version of Drive that we all wanted and didn't get.
Oh my, the clock is ticking, so say, all you have to do is say.
Number 8.
And my pick for the most underrated movie of the year is...
Don't remember this film? It came out the same day as Beauty and the Beast, so probably not. It was written by James Gunn and was one of the most suspenseful movies of the year. The plot is very similar to the Japanese film Battle Royale, which you may also remember as the film that was very similar to The Hunger Games. A bunch of office workers are trapped in the building by management and have to kill each other until one person is left alive. But just like what I said with The Hunger Games, it doesn't matter if something is similar to another film, it's how well you execute it, and this movie executes it damn near perfectly. The death scenes are good, gory fun, but what I found really nice was how suspenseful it is. And that's because, unlike some other films like this, you don't really have a main set of characters that you know are going to make it to the end. There is one who you can pretty much guess is going to make it pretty far, but everyone else, no matter how much development they get, could be killed in an instant.
And that's one negative thing I have to say about this movie. They unceremoniously killed my favorite character.
There are scenes in this that are almost Hitchcockian and suspenseful, and it manages to balance comedy and horror well, even getting in some satire. I really wouldn't be surprised if the place I worked at did this to me one day. I would go on more, but I'm planning a Norty's Forgotten Flicks of this, so stay tuned for that next year.
I spy with my little light.
Number 7.
This was not a great year for animation. Again, it wasn't the worst year, it was in 2013, but of all the theatrical Western animated films that came out this year, I can find 4 that I'll actually watch again, maybe 5 when I'm going through my midlife crisis. Anyway, it's Coco. Coco's the one that's on the list.
You're all really out there.
You thought we weren't?
Well, I don't know. I thought it might have been one of those made-up things that adults tell kids, like vitamins.
Miguel, vitamins are a real thing.
Coco is basically this year's Moana, in that it uses a lot of cliches: the kid who wants to make music but his family doesn't let him, the 2 characters going on an adventure that I'm pretty sure is every Pixar movie ever made, the lie revealed, and of course that cliche Disney really likes doing this decade. But they're all done so well and wrapped up in a solid story with characters I actually really cared about. Miguel is a smart but not very obedient child who just wants to make music music and will do anything, even risk death, in order to make his dreams come true. Hector is the charming trickster who the second he appeared on screen I said, I'm gonna love this character, and I did. And the rest of Miguel's family, both in the living world and the afterlife, I understood their reasoning for hating music, as extreme as they could be. And funny. This is actually one of the funniest movies I've seen this year. I don't think a single joke bombed, and a lot of them are laugh out loud hilarious. I love the world of the afterlife. It manages to be both familiar and completely alien. And it's gorgeous. The animation is so freaking good. This is one of those films where I want to watch the animation process, especially with that tiger. And the way these skeletons move and interact with the environment. It not only creates some fun and inventive action scenes, but gives the characters more personality. And it was a good decision giving them eyes so there aren't just big black holes of death. And it's wrapped up in a nice emotional story that has several twists and a musical score that match all the Disney greats.
But is it a good representation of Mexican culture?
Well, I don't know, because I myself am an uncultured American who has never left North America. But given how well this thing is doing in Mexico, I think I can assume that it's pretty fair in how they portray it, and honestly, it made me want to learn more about it. Like I said, the only problem I have is that it does rely on a lot of cliches, but that doesn't take away from how good this film is. Coco isn't my favorite Pixar movie. I don't even know if it would be in my top 5, but it's definitely another great one. Number 6.
Hiya, Georgie. What a nice boat. Do you want it back?
If I were to make a list of my favorite theatrical experiences this year, this would probably be number 2. We'll get to number 1 later.
This is probably the scariest movie I saw all year. There is technically a horror movie later, but that will be more for story and filmmaking. This just scared the crap out of me. There are several moments where I actually jumped back and my mouth was hanging so wide open, it's like I watched the tape from The Ring. And I like that it has different kinds of scares. It has the jump scares, but it also can be subtle, either just letting Pennywise stand there and let his mannerisms scare you, or by showing the true horror. The fact that the parents in Maine are fucking assholes. Seriously, like half the kids' parents are terrible people. Bill Skarsgård gives a fucking magnificent performance. He had to try hard to even come close to Tim Curry's iconic portrayal of the character, but he may have even surpassed it. Everything about this guy is just unnerving. From the way he moves to the way he talks, he's just so creepy. But he can also be a little funny too. The kids are also really good. They say you should never work with kids and that good child actors are very hard to find. Well, I don't know if I can believe that anymore because this and Stranger Things together have like 20 good child actors. I did like most of their story arcs and wanted them to be safe. And the direction is excellent. The music and editing create this unnerving atmosphere. But I think what I like most about it is that it's just a fun thrill ride. It's kind of like going through a really good haunted house, where each new scene you're anticipating what will try to scare you next. And when it does scare you and you stop to catch your breath, you're also kind of smiling because you're having so much fun. It does have a few pacing issues. I mean, I still don't understand why they split up at one point. And the tone doesn't always gel together, but those are rare. For the most part, it is one of the most fun movies I saw all year.
All my friends are dead. Push me to the
edge.
Number 5.
Finally, a great female-led superhero movie.
I will defend Suicide Squad even though no one else will, but besides that, I couldn't give a shit about the DCEU. Man of Steel had some great action, but the plot and characters were a bore, and Batman v Superman was so forgettable except for Batman and Wonder Woman. But Wonder Woman's solo movie is awesome. I just loved Wonder Woman as a character. Unlike Superman, she was actually interesting, and unlike the Suicide Squad, she was actually a good person. Gal Gadot is fantastic in the role, and she has a really good personality that works works for both the comedic scenes and the serious scenes. In fact, I think she's the first lead in a comic book movie in a long time that I can actually call a hero. Every other comic character, no matter how good, they have to be coerced into it. But Wonder Woman just does it because she believes it's the right thing to do. Chris Pine and the rest of the supporting cast are great as well. The ethical dilemmas and story feel more fresh than other superhero flicks, and the action and direction are absolutely phenomenal. I actually saw this in 3D. Not by choice, it was just the only showing I could get to. In the first 15 minutes when we were on the island with the Amazons, there were parts where I genuinely forgot that I was in a theater. I would be so invested that when I blinked, I was like, holy crap, where am I? And then realized, oh right, I'm in a seat in a theater. That's not real. I'm not actually there. I was actually transported into this world. And the movie does have some really heartbreaking scenes. They show that not everything will work out the way you want it to. The only problem I had was the villain was pretty weak. I mean, he wasn't bad, but he did seem pretty generic, and the actor's portrayal just felt off. But other than that, this movie was fantastic.
You know, I actually thought Justice League was fine despite its problems, so between these two films and Suicide Squad, I'm actually excited to see what DC has coming up next. Good job, guys.
Strip that down for me. Yeah, 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 yeah. You're the one girl, come and strip that down for me. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Number 4.
Remember Norty's first impressions?
Maybe I'll start that this year. Just start talking about movies in theaters, give me my first impressions.
Yeah, that experiment crashed and died.
To whom am I speaking with now?
Dr. Fletcher. It's Barry.
It doesn't seem like Barry. Barry is an extroverted leader.
Yes, I am.
Everything I said in that video is still pretty accurate. This is probably the movie I was hyped to see the most this year, and it lived up to my expectations. I goddamn love this movie. I guess we'll start with James McAvoy's absolutely phenomenal performance. This act could have gone so wrong, but the way it's written and directed to give it a slightly comedic tone while still being absolutely terrifying, and McAvoy's conviction really leads to this being one of the best performances I saw all year. He needs to get some kind of award recognition for this. If it's Best Supporting Actor, I still think James Franco was better, but this is really close. I wouldn't mind if he won. It's not just the way he talks that distinguishes between the several different personalities, it's also how he walks, how he acts, all the different mannerisms he has. Every personality has their own style. From the way Dennis has OCD, to the lanky way Barry walks, to Hedwig just being Hedwig, it is a freaking amazing performance. But Anna Taylor-Joy and Betty Buckley also deserve some praise as well, and the characters they play are both multi-layered and likable. I'm a little split, no pun intended, on the other two girls. Something about the way they acted seemed a little off, but they didn't affect the movie too much. Also, this is one of the most suspenseful movies I've ever seen. The scene where the girls first wake up after being kidnapped and Dennis comes into the room is one of the most nerve-wracking things you will see. In fact, that may be my favorite scene from this year. My legs were shaking. The direction is excellent, and there's little touches that you notice more on a second viewing, which is one of those things I love about Shyamalan's films. It's gorgeous, the music is great, and it manages to have some decent humor, and then there's the twist.
You may not understand the twist, but when I first saw it, I did this.
And also, the twist makes the last act of the movie make more sense. If you feel the movie is getting a bit far-fetched in the last 20 minutes, it all adds up in the end. Split is one of M. Night's best, and I can't wait to see what he brings us with Glass in 2019.
I'm the one. Don't you know, girl? Don't you know, girl? I am the one for you. I'm the one. Yeah, I'm the one.
Number 3.
So I said it was the second best theatrical experience I had this year. This is number 1.
Anyone who knows me knows I'm not the biggest fan of war films. Granted, I still haven't seen some of like the really classic ones like Patton or Glory, but before this year, the only one that I can say that I loved was Saving Private Ryan. Well, now it's two. Dunkirk is filmmaking perfection. This really shows how good a filmmaker Christopher Nolan has become. There isn't a part of this movie where I thought it seemed too Hollywood or too romanticized. It all felt real. The sound design in this is fantastic. This is going to win all the best sound awards. Seeing it in a theater made this one of the most frightening films all year. The music, the effects from the guns and planes, it's treated not unlike how you would treat a monster movie. And the action itself is pretty great too. It's shot well, it's intense, and the editing is good. I can't believe this is by the same editor as Batman Begins. But it's not just the direction that makes it worthy of being called one of the best war films ever made. The way they tell this story is genius, because we follow the soldiers on the beach over a week, the guys on the boat over a day, and the guys in the planes over an hour. This way it never feels like it's spending too much time in one location, and like I said, the editing of these scenes is fantastic. Now, one criticism thrown at the movie is that it doesn't have much character development. We're basically just thrown into the action from the very beginning, and I will agree that we don't get to know the characters that well, but to me that just adds to the realism, because real life doesn't give development at times when it would be dramatically appropriate. Also, the actors do their best to give the characters personality, and it shows a true but often forgotten part of World War II history and honors those who fought and died in that battle. This film reminds me why I go to the theater. With most of these other movies, as good as they are, I probably would have gotten just as good an experience had I watched them on TV. But this is a film that is great on its own. I still will love it watching it on TV, but seeing it in the theaters pushes it right into the category of amazing. Number 2.
There were a number of what I like to call fuck Trump movies this year.
From Logan being about a group of Mexicans illegally crossing the border, to Detroit saying that more policing may not be the best idea, to The Big Sick showing that even the most religious Muslims can still be a bit more tolerant than some think, and that they aren't all terrorists.
But I don't think you can find a better example than a diverse group of millennials fighting back against fascists in the 1%.
Let the past die. That's the only way to become what you were meant to be.
Ah yes, the movie that stirred up so much controversy over the past few weeks. From those who think that it didn't understand how the Force worked to those who think it's promoting white genocide. No, seriously, there are people who think that. Anyway, this movie basically took all the best parts of Force Awakens, the characters, the intriguing lore and beautiful set pieces, and the best parts of Rogue One, the action, the risks, and the more diverse group of characters, and put them together. Well, I guess we'll start with people's problems, because for a movie that's not even a month old, it created a lot of controversy. Luke is out of character. No, he's just 30 years older and been through a lot of shit. The Force can't do those things. Well, technically they never said it couldn't, and I'm just someone who can pretty much accept anything with the Force. You want to say it's caused by midichlorians and can control the weather? I'm fine with it. And,
Actually, that's about it. Despite all the bitching I've heard, I've only ever heard them complain about those two things.
I think most of people's problems come from the fact that it's a challenging movie. As much as I loved Force Awakens, it played it pretty safe. This takes a lot more risks. It doesn't spell everything out for you, and not everything works out the way you think it would. This is actually a very unpredictable movie. There were several parts where my jaw dropped when something happened that was different from my expectations. In fact, there was a part where I thought it was almost over, but then something happens and it turns out there was still like 20 minutes left, and I was excited! I legit could have stayed in that theater for another hour. Like the movie or not, you have to give it points for ambition, but there's so much more to love about it. The action is fantastic, the opening is just as good as The Empire Strikes Back, the ending is just as good as Rogue One, and it all has this sense of urgency since everything is on a timer. The acting is solid, and Mark Hamill deserves a goddamn Oscar, which would make him the third person to win Best Supporting Actor this year in my opinion. But no, he is that good. It's also probably the funniest Star Wars movie movie since Empire. Whether it be Finn, Poe, Luke, or BB-8, they all get some laughs. There's genuine emotion, and some of the ethical dilemmas don't always have a clear answer. And it looks gorgeous. The effects, the cinematography, all with that kick-ass soundtrack. Is it perfect? No, there's some pacing issues in the second act, a few things felt a little too convenient, and some of the dialogue felt like they were trying to make the next iconic Star Wars lines, but that doesn't take away from the fact that The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie since The Empire Strikes Back. Number 1.
So when I think, what was my favorite movie of the year, I don't really think what had the best stuff in it, or what had the least amount of problems. I think, what gave me the best overall experience? What did I have the most fun watching? What made me forget about all of my problems throughout its entire runtime? And looking back, this is the one.
This is Sam Cooke, one of the greatest Earth singers of all time.
Guardians Volume 2, to me, is an example of a perfect summer movie. Now that doesn't mean it's a perfect film. It can be predictable, and there is one moment near the end that felt incredibly forced. But this movie reminds me why I love movies. First off, and this is most important, it's just fun. The action scenes are creative, but also manage to sneak some humor in there, and while not every joke works, the ones that do are great, and even the ones that don't, you immediately forget about, because a good joke will likely come up right after. The characters are all likable, and they all have great chemistry with each other. They fight, they argue, but you can tell they all love and respect each other. And they also all have depth and conflict. Every single one gets something to do and has some important character arc. The villain is one of Marvel's best. Maybe not quite as good as Loki, but still really strong. You understand why he is doing the stuff he does, and I almost felt like siding with him at points. It's never boring, the special effects are beautiful, and it has a lot of heart to it. This is actually a really sweet movie. From the scenes with Drax and Mantis, to the stuff with Baby Groot, to the scenes between Star-Lord and his dad, and Star-Lord and Yondu. Look at that Mary Poppins line that became a meme. Yeah, it's funny, but in the context of the movie, it's also kind of heartwarming. This really is like The Empire Strikes Back, in that it outdoes the original in every way. I do like the first one, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't lose a little bit of the spark on repeated viewing. That film was great for how different it was at the time. This movie had to be great by being a great movie, and it was. This features everything that I love about movies. Great story, great characters, an intriguing world, and plenty of laughs, thrills, and heart. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is awesome. So another year closes, and given that every year since 2015 has been a little bit better than the last, I think 2018 will be okay. Not great, I'm not naive, but I think it'll be okay. 2018 is gonna be that hurdle year. If we can make it over it, we should be able to get to the finish line. I got a lot of stuff planned for this year. I'm gonna do a bunch of videos on this channel. I'm planning on doing way more on my second channel, which I haven't touched since October, and done like 3 or 4 videos in this entire year. So let's all just try and make 2018 as good as it possibly can be. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.
It's a festival of friendship. Together we are one. A day we will never forget. And now everything is ready. So when the day is done, the weather, the banquet, the style, and music, all will be in perfect harmony.
him for the hymnless kids with no religion. Yeah, we keep on